Hi.
Hello. Welcome to our Sunday gathering, Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's Legacy. Just want to do some quick check-ins, and then we're gonna. Professor Howard has some education for us today, which I'm super excited about, and then we'll do some updates and gonna go with it. So let's check in. Ma, how are you?
All good here. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Glad you're here. Terry, how's it going?
Good, good. It's nice to join you guys today.
Thanks for being with us today. You know a lot about this topic, so it's good. It's going to be good to have you here. Christina, how are you?
I'm good. Good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm going to go all over. And Deb Cruz, what's happening?
Life. keeping me on my toes.
That's good. Well, we're just going to call Deb the ballerina. Deb.
Right.
How are you?
Good. Good to be here in the name of Orca Fellowship and Education. Thanks for having me.
Yay, always. And we got Stephanie and Casey up in the corner there. How are you guys? Not talking. Wait.
There we go. We're good. Happy to be here on this rainy Sunday in the land of 10,000 lakes. And Deb, I love that you said toes the Minnesota way. Because this is how we say toes in Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's that Scandinavian-ness.
I still haven't taken Deb Cruz's laugh and made it a ringtone yet, but I'm going to do it today. I'll send it to everyone. Put a link. Howard, thank you for being with us today. As always, how are you?
Oh, well, thank you all for being here. This is wonderful. Yeah, no, I'm fine, and it's a beautiful day. It's overcast, a good northwest sort of almost raining day. And we have this amazing confluence of transients and residents in the same place at the same time this morning, just to illustrate the topic of our conversation today.
That's
So
kind of
perfect.
what I thought. I was like, hey, they intro your talk about that.
Yeah, there we go. They could pop up any second. J-Pod is coming up from the south of San Juan Island. L-Pod, T's, transients, big swales. What do they call them now? There's a whole new scientific name for them coming up. But they were there just 15, 20 minutes ago, a little bit to the north. So they probably have skedaddled a little further to the north, and some confirmed J-Pod members are coming up San Juan Island right now, should be within view. I think I saw one a little while ago.
That's super awesome. I know I was watching earlier when it was just the transients who were on screen, but man, just gorgeous. They were getting some really nice close-up shots. So if you guys are not following the Whale Museum from Limekiln live stream on YouTube, you guys should totally do it, because I get a little notification when there's something going on, and it's just really nice to watch them and go.
It was great. They were all lined up together. They were acting like residents in a resting line for a while there. It was great.
That's really cool. How often, Howard? Let's get into it. How often are they spotted with each other?
Well, define width, because they're never really intermingling. They're never associating. They can be within a quarter mile, half mile or so of each other, but they tend to be, mutually aversive. They go opposite directions. Generally, it's residents have their way and transients get out of the way.
That's what I've heard. That if the transients are there and the residents come, then the transients just kind of like, we're out of here. So I was curious how often they're in that same, I mean, we don't know, right?
But not often. No, it's pretty rare.
It's cool.
Anymore, anyway. Well, I mean, it used to be that there were never any transients back in the 80s and 90s. And then in the 2000s, it sort of switched over. That transition started to happen where we didn't see residents as often, as early, or as many days of the summer and spring and fall as we usually did before. And more transients came in. And now it's transients every day of the year, somewhere around, sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different groups of transients between the San Juans and the Canadian Gulf Islands and Puget Sound and way down south in Puget Sound and Saratoga Passage. There's going to be some transients somewhere. And residents come by just every now and then, especially J-Pod. It's really only been J-Pod with a few exceptions. But they show up every now and then. They spent a lot of time way north, getting lost up in Georgia Strait, up in Canadian waters. But they showed up yesterday and today off the south end of San Juan Island.
It's so awesome. Let's talk a little bit about Brave Little Hunter, if we will, for a minute before we get into the science of it. And I'm going to unmute Terry here because Terry's very familiar with the family. But we'll give a little update just so you guys know. Howard, I'm going to mute you for just 1 second. Just so you guys know, my understanding is that as of yesterday morning, they did a complete acoustic and visual kind of span of that area, the inlet, and that yes, she is in fact in open water, and there was no sign of her in any of the inlets. So that is really good news. Terry, I'm going to put up this picture here that you sent me earlier so you guys can get an idea of where she was. If you look all the way up at the top there, where Ceballos is. And so all the way out through Esperanza Inlet and out there is where that was kind of her path. And I don't have a pointer, so I can't really do that. But you guys could see, she had to come down and then all the way through that. And so I think it's my opinion that once she got past that bridge, she was like, okay, I know where I'm supposed to go. And I know it took some more coaxing. You guys have all seen the videos. Jude and her team leading her out. So Jude, I'm really bummed you're not with us, but maybe next Sunday. But we just want to publicly thank you for being that beautiful guiding force for her, auntie, if you will, guiding her out and supporting her and singing to her and loving her, and also firmly telling her it was time to go, and I think she needed that. So we all just want to thank you, Basicology and Jared, the tribe. I mean, everybody who was out there. Gosh, you guys, for 5 weeks. It's like literally it's been 5 weeks. And I know everyone's exhausted, but we really, really appreciate you. Terry, tell us a little bit about her family and who they are, and no, you guys, as far as I know, they have not located the family yet. They haven't had those sightings, but there's a lot going on. So Terry, tell us about her family.
Well, I became attached to this amazing family through Spong, the mother's sister, Fuser. So Fuser came down into the Puget Sound and hung around for days and days, and I got to observe her, and she's like the most phenomenal mother, and she was constantly hunting and trying to keep her kids together. One of the young boys disappeared into, I think it was Commencement Bay by Tacoma. So she had to go and round him up. So she was constantly, just the greatest mother. So I've done a little bit of research, and this has come from a lot of different sources. And Howard knows probably so much more than I do. Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's is T109A3A. And then, of course, you all know that her mother, Spong, T109A3, passed away. And then the really cool thing is that I don't think we have to worry as much as we have been, because her grandmother and her great-grandmother are phenomenal. So the great-grandma's name is Frio, or Runaway. And the First Nation people call the family the Runaways, which is so cool. and that's T109A. So that's the so that's the grandma, and then the great grandma is T109, and her name is Noyes. It's spelled Noyes, but she's also known as Big Mama, and she's still alive too. And if you look into the whole matriline, they have had so many babies. So it's a huge family, and they're all like just inspirational. So I just have the strongest feeling that the ancestors are guiding all of them. And yeah, so that's just a little bit.
Oh, thanks, Terry. That was so heartwarming and beautiful and inspiring.
Yep.
Yeah. It's
Great.
oh, Howard's going to show you right there. It's going to show you the family.
And one of them in that family is named after Howard.
Oh,
I don't know if you know that.
Who is it? Who is it?
Really?
Yep.
Nobody mentioned that to me.
Yeah, let me see if I can grab it real quick on my document.
That's really cool. I'm going to show you guys a picture. Jared, I'm so sorry. Jared took this picture, and this is on the Basicology Facebook page. But isn't that picture just phenomenal? Just there, right at the bridge. And I believe this was the first that first evening when she was kind of like, nope, I'm not going under that. But she was breaching and doing her tail slaps, and as they were leading her, isn't that gorgeous?
And Howard, the one that is named after you is T109A4. It's a male. And he was born in 2012. And the name they've assigned to this beautiful orca is Garrett. And under the history of the name, it says researcher Howard Garrett.
Yay!
That's so cool.
I had no idea. That's
There you
funny.
go.
I knew one was named Elifrit for Dave,
Yep.
but I didn't realize that. Well, I'm
Happy birthday.
more than honored. Yes.
We didn't know we were doing an honoring today, but there you go. That's awesome. That's really cool.
Oh, so
Incredible. Wow. Okay. I
And
don't know where to start after that.
And that those details I shared on the matriline, that came from my friend Tisa, who's in charge of one of the whale sighting groups. And she keeps copious notes and documents. And she knows personally how attached I am to Fuser. And she's the one that messaged me with the news that that it was Spong that was stranded, and then she messaged me privately when the little one was free of the bridge. I mean, there was just stuff. So it's kind of nice how we're all connected, but that's just the source of the matriline.
Great. It's just beautiful to me how it happened, how it finally unfolded with Judea Smith and Rob John, is that it? And the others that were named, I should have these names handy, but they went out and they basically struck up a relationship and got to know little Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's and then fed her some seal meat and talked to her. I don't know. I would love to see videos of exactly what they were doing, but they spent a lot of just quality time relating with Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's, and that's kind of a no-no in scientific circles and in conventional wisdom, that if you do that, they become habituated to you, and then they'll never leave you alone, and they'll be a nuisance, and they'll forget how to be a whale, and they'll never want to go out and catch food, and all of these scare stories about what would happen if you made friends with a whale. And they did it anyway, because their wisdom goes back 10,000 years, and they knew better that you can actually relate with Maganuth is their name for orca. I'm sure I'm not giving it justice, but it's their equivalent to Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's, which is the Lummi and the Salish name for orcas. Their word is Maganuth or something to that effect. But they knew what to do. And it was interesting that when Jared was on this very program, TokiTV, a couple of weeks ago, he suggested that would be a thing to do, and we can risk the habituation. He said it's life or limb, but really there was no harm done. These are beautiful videos.
Mhm.
Yeah, these were from Jared.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And there she is. That's the night. I think that was about 4:30.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so they
Wow.
went ahead and did it, and there was not I don't know what was going on up there between them. The official authority, which was Department of Fisheries and Oceans, had a different idea that you had to pull her out of the water, capture her, get her in a sling, put her on a flatbed truck, and drive her down, and then deposit her in the ocean. And that would be severely traumatic and not go well, probably. And, I really didn't think it was necessary. I'm sorry, Marcia can't be on today because she certainly understood from her time with Toki that yes, you can befriend an orca. And they went ahead and did it. And then they had that success. I mean, they basically were attempting to bring her under that bridge, and she kind of was hesitant at that, and didn't go under at first. But then in the middle of the night, and I don't know if she was accompanied or if she just on her own said, to herself, "Self, it's time to get out of here," and moved on under the bridge and down the lagoon and out to the inlet. She did it on her own, but I mean, there was that suggestion and reinforcement support and sort of, the strengthening of the relationship, I think really helped her have the courage to go ahead and move on out and go to the ocean. So I think it illustrated what some of us have been trying to say for a long time, is that you can actually build a relationship and have it come out well. And she's out looking for her family. She knows who she is. She knows where she came from. She knows her family. She's going to go find them.
She's gonna go find him, and I think it's really cool that they listened to her.
Yeah.
Not us, not anyone else, because I think we all had our own ideas of what had to happen, and it had to happen now. And oh my gosh, and if they don't do it by this week, and her skin and her because we think we know, right? And humans are pretty smart, but they know more than we do about their world. There was some argument on Facebook about, well, if they were smarter than humans, yeah, well, but they're not living on here. If they were living on land and they were human, they would probably be smarter. They'd be a whole subgroup of human, but because they'd be smarter, but they'd be the geniuses. But they know more about their world than we do. And as much as we can explore and do all that, and thank goodness we have folks that do that. So I'd like to talk about our next topic, to know more about the ocean life. We don't know more about it than they do. And I think she just, everybody listened to her. They tried a different way, and she was like, that ain't happening.
Right.
But they also did it being really cautious. And you see they met with, it was this whole group of the First Nations folks and scientists and and all these people trying to figure out what was best for her. Everyone's intentions were really, really good. Every single one of them. And then for whatever reason, it worked out how it was supposed to. She left without experiencing that kind of trauma. And, and now we just, our prayers were that she get out of the lagoon. And now our prayers are that she find her family. They hear her now that she's out. And you guys, again, can see how far up she was in this, how many sound barriers there were, but now she's not. And and they'll hear each other. And you're right, Howard.
Right.
She's smart, and she'll find her family. That's what's next.
Yep.
That's what's next.
Yep, absolutely. It may take a week or two or more before we get a sighting of them, but I'm sure they'll get together.
And
And
there's
Jared, oh,
I
sorry.
was just going to say that. No, Terry, I was going to say that, guys, if you're on the water or you know anyone who's on the water out there, please go to Base Etology on Facebook, because Jared has this whole thing set up where they're using AI to identify. And so if you spot and see, you can register for this. And while Howard's talking, I'll get that all loaded up for you guys. So at the end of the show, you guys can share that. But so to help identify where her family is, if you see her, they are reminding people, no, you can't just go up to her if you see her when you're out there, and same with her family, but you can send lots of photos and location identification so that they can, keep track of where she is and where her family is. So Howard, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to talk about her family, talk about the residents that we all know and love and the differences, and how you started this. You started this conversation how long ago?
Oh, well,
Talk about
40 some years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, this is all sparked by this landmark event that just happened, which was the declaration that there are 2 new species on the horizon. It's not quite official yet, but it's basically been all set up, and the Society for Marine Mammalogy just has to stamp approval on it. And the residents and transients right around Salish Sea, right here, will be declared each a separate species from Orcinus orca. They have until now, all orcas around the world have been considered one species. And right, here we are. New research has shown, it's not that new a research actually, it's just the buildup of all of the lines of evidence. Because basically what we're seeing is humanity trying to figure out what we're seeing out there. What is the reality? What kind of animal is this that is populating our planet and is all around us, and especially around the Salish Sea? San Juan Islands, Whidbey, Puget Sound, Georgia Strait, Vancouver, Victoria, all these inland waters, and up around Johnstone Strait, the north end of Vancouver Island. We have these 2 completely different types of orcas. And that's unheard of around the world, that they could be, virtually the same animal. They look a lot alike. There's some differences, but that's because they have kept themselves separate from each other for, according to the DNA evidence, about 300,000 years at least. I think it may go back further than that. So they live by their traditions and by their rules and by their cultural ties, their bonds, their associations. They live within their families. And really, to tell the story, you got to go back about 8 or 10 million years when the first dolphins arose in the ocean waters, by all the evidence. And the largest of those dolphins were orcas. And they came into their basic form and size as the biggest of the dolphins, and therefore the top predator in the ocean, around 8 or 10 million years ago. I mean, it's, there's not a whole lot of fossil evidence, but that's roughly when it happened. And they're very, very smart. They have these really big brains. When they're born, their brains are about 3 times the size of our human brains, and that's at birth. And they grow to be about 5 times the size of our human brains when they become adults. And they have developed these ways of living on the earth so that they have maximum happiness, maximum, security, relationship, success with just the essentials of living, making a living, going out, catching, eating, and in their case, sharing their food. With residents and transients, the DNA and other evidence shows that the transients were in the Pacific Ocean before residents. They're sort of the native species. And that sometime over the last 20,000 or so or more years, that some Atlantic herring eating, fish eating resident types came over during the interglacial when there was a melting of the North Pole ice pack, and so some residents came over. And they radiated out. I don't know. That's all the lime kiln hydrophone making that clicking noise. It's probably echolocation. I don't know what it is. But the resident fish-eating types spread out across the North Atlantic rim. And so today we have 5 different communities of fish-eating residents. There's the southern residents and the northern residents around the north end of Vancouver Island and into Haida Gwaii in southeast Alaska. And then, right, well, that's the 2 types, the resident and the big transients. And the Prince William Sound, Alaska, resident fish-eating types, that's another entire distinct separate community. And then there's the Western Alaska and Bering Sea residents. There are several thousand of them, they estimate. And then further west are the Kamchatka, Russian, and Hokkaido, northern Japan, Russian resident population. And they're all very similar. They're all salmon eating, fish eating, matrilineal, bonded for life. Both offspring stay with their mothers. They've got it worked out, and they're all very similar, but those 5 are completely separate. So now science, and it really was only in the 1970s, it was Mike Bigg who started noticing that, hey, we've got 2 different kinds of orcas here. There's, the big groups, and we know them, we photo ID'd them, and every now and then these others will come in little groups of 2, 3, or 4, maybe 5 tops, and they'll just kind of move on through, and then they're gone, and we don't see them again for maybe months or years. So he called those transients. They don't show up much. That's how it was in the 70s. And it boggled their minds, because how can that be, that they can be the same species, but they go different directions? And so basically, Mike Bigg and his colleagues at first thought, well, they got kicked out. They're the rogue whales. They're, just not welcome in the resident pods. But then they started to notice the dietary differences. It's pretty hard to tell what they're eating, but over 10 or 15 years, it became more obvious that the transients were going after seals and residents going after fish. And so they kind of qualified that by saying, well, mostly fish and mostly mammals, or they specialize in fish or mammals. But it really wasn't until more recent years that it became really obvious that, and the DNA, the prey studies, the fecal studies, and biopsies and every other line of evidence showed that the residents ate only fish, didn't eat any marine mammals, and that the big killer whales or transients ate only mammals and just wouldn't touch a fish. So it's a clear and distinct total difference. And that really confronted the scientific community with something they had never seen before. Because there's no other wildlife that's like that. There's no other, large mammal that divides into different cultures. And so it was really hard to explain. And in the mid 90s, it came down to the crunch because the southern residents were clearly distinct. Clearly, they had no association, no interaction with not just the residents, but northern residents and also transients or any other group. They were, a completely distinct population. And between 1995 and 2000, the population declined almost 20%. And so there was a very loud outcry to add them to the endangered species list. And every individual was known because the Center for Whale Research had done the research and had identified each one, their whole natural lines and family patterns, and every single individual had been tracked since the mid 1970s. So they had to be admitted that they are a separate population. So they called them a distinct population segment of a subspecies that didn't exist, that had to be named. That was actually the wording that went into the official documentation to make them listed as an endangered species. So they've really been struggling with this. And this is sort of a temporary solution to declare the southern resident community as one species. Or maybe they're declaring the residents all up and down the Pacific coast. That's really not clear from what they're saying from this article. And the transients are another species. But,
Howard.
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt real quick. Do you mind if we share the live stream? Because it looks like there's a lot of activity.
Oh, hey, go for it.
And I'll remember where we're at.
Oh, there they are. Yep. Okay, these have to be JPod. They're coming up from the south. This is great. This is like, live real-time illustration of exactly what we're talking about, because about an hour ago, we had transients on this same webcam. The webcam didn't go anywhere. The whales just came by.
Do you have on your computer, do you by chance have the YouTube up as well? I'm just wondering if you can mute it on your side. If you do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, I can. There, I muted it.
There we go. We can.
Oh, yeah, all right.
That's what that noise is.
Little did I know. I thought that was yours. Okay.
I'll put theirs on now.
Yeah, that's great. So they had to figure out, it was really obvious that they were separate populations that had to be named as separate species. But this is really only the beginning, because really each distinct culture, and that's what's boggling the minds of the biological scientific community, is that animals can live within cultures. And that is what is the real kind of take home, is that every orca in the world is a member of its culture. Around the South Pole, the Antarctic orcas, there are at least 5 different cultures. One is very, very distinct. It's mentioned in that NOAA article. John Durbin talks about how the type D Antarctic orcas are the next likely candidate, but there are at least 4 others, and there are other communities. There's at least 2 in the North Atlantic. They're around Australia. There's 2 completely separate communities on the west side and on the east side of Australia. There are South Pacific orcas. There are Caribbean orcas that are just not well described at all. But they're all members of their, not just their families, but their families live within traditional cultures. And this is just so unheard of. And it tells us that they are not just aware of their surroundings and self-aware, aware of themselves, but aware of their families and their cultures and their belonging. Their identities are as members of these cultures. And this is really pretty difficult for the scientific community to grapple with. Just as a little side note, I happen to have gotten equipped with the tools necessary, the conceptual tools, to be able to see what's going on, because my education, which started in the 60s and ended in 1980, was with a degree, there we are, some J-pod whales, with a degree in sociology. So the idea of cultures and cultural identity and the kind of interactions that reinforce the traditions and the membership within cultures. Oh, here comes J-pod. I'm watching with everyone else. That's how we work. That's how humans live within societies, within their own cultures, within their own membership as members of cultures. And so it wasn't that hard for me to see that a long time ago. Oh, beautiful. Looks like we're getting almost a resting line of J-pod here coming in. They're nicely grouped up. Good to see them grouped up, because that tells us that they're finding food. If they're not finding food, they tend to spread out like they were a couple of days ago when they came down Harrow Strait. They were scattered out for miles and miles. You'd only see maybe 2 or 3 at any one time in any one place. And here we have a group of, it looks like at least 10 or 12. That's a good sign. They're socializing. I think when they have enough to eat, they like to get together and socialize. That's, to me, that's one of their traditions. It's in keeping with their sort of traditional way of living, is to get together and play and travel together and socialize and do all sorts of things that we just have no idea what they are when they have enough to eat. So that's what we're seeing here. It's great. So this has been a long time coming. And in 2001, a paper was published by Luke Rendell and Hal Whitehead that announced for the world that orcas live within cultures. The title of the paper, published in the Journal of Behavioral and Brain Sciences, top of the line academic journal, was Culture in Whales and Dolphins. And they did a thorough search. They went through all the species that have been studied at all, and there really weren't that many and still aren't that many. But humpbacks, pilot whales, sperm whales, and orcas are the species that have been studied the most to be able to have some kind of long-term picture of their associations, their family patterns, the permanence, the cohesion of the group. And of course, they found evidence of culture in humpbacks with the song of the humpback whale and the way that it is shared across an entire population, and that it evolves, that it changes a little bit every year, so that after 4 or 5 years, it's a completely different song. That's evidence of culture. Pilot whales are very similar to orcas in their association patterns, at least I believe it's long-finned. There's 2 types of pilot whales, long-finned and short-finned. And I believe the long-finned pilot whales have a very similar lifespan association pattern. They're not as well studied, but their cohesion is just absolute, which is shown when they come up on a beach. And if one is stuck, all the others will not leave, even if they all die on the beach. But what they found was that let's see. The quote here there we are. Perfect. The complex and stable vocal and behavioral cultures of sympatric groups, that means living in the same habitat, of killer whales, Orcinus orca, appear to have no parallel outside humans. In other words, unheard of anywhere in wildlife biology except in humans, and represent an independent evolution of cultural faculties, which is pretty astounding. But that was 2001, and there really hasn't been a lot of follow-up or a lot of, adaptation to that established fact that orcas live within cultures. It's sort of acknowledged as a fact. Yeah, orcas live in cultures, like that's a characteristic of them. Like, the males have tall dorsal fins and they live in cultures, like it's another thing that you can say about them. But really, it changes everything. When they have that kind of awareness of themselves and others, they become much more self-determined, much more able to override what we think of as instincts, reflex, that they can make their own decisions, and that they are always acutely aware of who they are. So that's why I didn't feel like there was a risk of habituation. That may apply to geese or even bears or a lot of other animals. But when it comes to orcas, they don't forget who they are. They don't imprint and attach to someone, even if someone is feeding them and becoming their friend. They'll certainly engage and get involved in the relationship and be happy to go along and in a mutually trusting relationship. But I think Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's will show us that she'd rather be with her family. She knows who she is and who they are, and I think she'll go find them because she lives as a member of a culture. Let's see, where are we? I've been straying off into other screens. Well, I've been blathering on here, but I mean, does anyone have any comments, questions, viewpoints? Well, I mean,
I think there were a couple questions a little bit earlier on, about are they going to classify, are all the different residents populations likely to be declared the same species? And I think you talked about that.
Gradually, yeah.
Yeah. I also think that if we could break this down, and I know it's really small, but it would just kind of recap what you're talking about. So there's the size, right? So these are the kind of the categories, at least in this article. So the size, the coloration, the residents with the open saddle patches, and the bigs with closed or uniformly gray saddle patches, dorsal fin. And the residents, males very tall, up to 6.5 feet. May lean forward, females curved with rounded tip. And then the bigs, the males tall, at least 5 feet with a wider base. And then the females slightly triangular with a pointed tip. Group structure, you talked about that. Prey, we talked about that. Hunting, I didn't know this. So typically silent, the bigs, when they're foraging, they're typically silent. And then the residents are highly vocal.
Right.
I mean, I think that's really, really cool. And then the ranges, seasonal ranges for the residents, and then the wide ranges for the bigs. We talked about that. And then acoustics, population-based differences in call types with distinct family dialects for the residents, and then regional differences in call type with the transients.
Right. The bigs transients seem to be pretty much the same culture. All up and down at least the Pacific coast, from the Bering Sea to Mexico. So, they use the same calls, or that they're the same basic culture, although there are regional sort of, faithfulness to certain areas. And there are some, now that there's a recent paper that there's a separate, maybe just they prefer to stay out in the open ocean and eat sharks or eat rays, or I'm not sure that, they're so poorly studied. It's really not much known what their diets are. But yeah, I mean, this is just really fascinating. The skulls are a little different. I mean, they've had, several 100,000 years of separate evolution of no crossover in the DNA. So they've, begun to show some distinctiveness within the two different types. And this one shows the new scientific names: Orcinus rectipinus, and the resident killer whale is Orcinus ater, ATER. And those are strange, kind of ridiculous. In fact, the whole naming of these two, neither one has orca in their name. So technically, we can't call them orcas anymore. I think we will, though. But these were named according to Charles Scammon, who was one of the most brutal butcherers of whales. He virtually exterminated the gray whale from the Pacific Ocean. He was one of the leaders, anyway, of the gray whale hunters. But then he, in his later years, thought he should be a naturalist, so he began to describe the different types. So he saw some orcas, and he said, oh, we have two different species. Some have tall dorsal fins, and some have short dorsal fins. And so that was his big revelation, that there's two different species of orcas. And now we know, of course, those are males and females. But that paper, which was then plagiarized by somebody at Smithsonian, this guy named Cope, who had never seen a whale, but he thought he should publish this paper based on Scammon's work without telling Scammon. And so he published a paper saying there were two different species of orcas. And, you know, it was all wrong, except for the two different species part. So since he said there were two different species, they used his names.
Wow.
So, you know, there's got to be a better way to come up with the names for the species. But at any rate, you know, they're struggling to name and describe these two completely different types of orcas that cross paths all the time, are totally aware of each other, but are bound by their traditions to stay with their families and not go interact in any way with the others. It's really pretty fascinating, and that's more or less the pattern around the world, but there's nowhere that it is more obvious than right here in the Salish Sea. There's no other place on Earth where you're likely to see these, certainly in not any populated place, maybe around Antarctica or northern Scotland for, you know, once or twice a year. But here, it's a very regular occurrence. We just saw it today. Residents and transients in the same water, same time. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question. So what are we waiting on for the? So they put this out the end of March, right? So
Right.
who makes that decision, that final decision?
Well, there's the Society for Marine Mammalogy is what it's called, and it was founded in the 70s, and it has an interesting history in a lot of ways. It was sort of founded to counteract the anti-captivity people, to have a sort of an established, respectable scientific body. But it's where all the studies from around the world are presented every other year. And the next one is going to be in Perth, Australia, in November this year, I believe. And there will be a committee of taxonomy. I'm not sure the formal name of the committee, but they're the committee of the old guard, you know, that will approve or not, but I'm sure they will approve of the renaming of these two species, and then it will become official and go into textbooks and everything.
Okay. And let's see, I'm looking to see if there's any other comments or questions, not related specifically to the topic, but obviously important to talking about the residents. Howard, do you know when the last time ocean sun was seen? I can't even remember, to be honest, the last time Alpod was seen.
The last time I recall for sure was in August, right around when Toki died, August 19 and 20, I believe. She was seen with her family, but actually away, off by herself, a half mile or so away from the L10s, L12s. They have different nomenclature, but anyway, yeah, I don't recall a time since then.
Okay. I wasn't sure because I wasn't sure. And then Susan's asking, where do offshore orcas fit into this?
That's another cultural community, completely separate and distinct, even though they're only like 25 miles or so and a little further off the shore, out to where the sharks are, out on the edge of the continental shelf. It's a very productive area because of the upwellings. It brings up the bottom currents, and so that makes it a productive part of the ocean. And so that's enough to to be the prey base for a whole separate culture. Yeah, they need a name too. They should have, or sign us offshoreicus or something.
You heard it. You heard the name here first.
Yeah.
That was good. Thank you. I'm going to check if anyone, I'm going to unmute you guys, or you might have to unmute yourself. See if anyone has any questions for Howard before we talk about the fin wave is what it's called from Bay Cetology. Let's see. One more. Wendy says, do you think that the captive breeding between different orca species is responsible for a high rate of stillbirth?
It could be a part of it, but I think it's captivity. That happens in captivity, and the whole conditions of captivity are not conducive to a healthy birth.
Speaking of captivity, I have not. A couple of people were messaging this week asking if if Sk'aliCh'elh left or not. No, they're still there, and they're fighting this, and I think we just stay tuned for the legal battle to see what's going to happen. But I'll just remind everyone, please continue to pray for the animals that are there, because while all this hoopla is going on in court and all this argument and fight, they are the ones continuing to suffer as animals in captivity are. So, but let's check for those ones right now in the middle of this battle. I told you guys I would get some information up, so let me see if I can share my screen here and show you. If you guys are not, first of all, if you're not following the Whale Museum on YouTube, you need to do that, and we'll end the show watching that because there's some good stuff on there. And also, Bay Cetology. You want to go to, let's see, can you guys see me moving this or no?
Yeah.
A little bit. Okay. So baycetology.org, you guys, baycetology.org. It's the Barrett Towers folks. And if you scroll down, we're going to go to this thing called FinWave. And it's an online dorsal fin identification streaming platform. So you can upload there, identify, search. If you know anyone on the water, you have to log in, so you have to have an account and all that. If you guys know anyone on the water, please give them the information to email info@baycetology.org. I believe they're still doing free, allowing people to join for free to help identify with Kusahea's family and her too, if you see her. So info@baycetology.org. If you guys know anyone at all who's on the water in that area, please have them register by sending an email to info@baycetology.org. We can do our part, whoever's out there on the water, to help identify where her family's located. That way, if someone does spot her, they know where she's at. Maybe they can do something. I don't know, just to keep good tabs. But we know she's going to find them. But why not use AI to assist, right? It's out there. So that's what I got for that. Are there people with Brave Little Hunter now? Marcia, no. As of what I heard an hour before the show, they did not have eyes on her, which is they are all viewing as a very good thing, because she's not here or anywhere around those inlets. So that's good. We'll keep our fingers crossed and our prayers up very high, and connecting this family to that baby. Got to get her out there with her family. So as Dee, I was talking to Dee the other day, and she made me cry, but she says, she's going to be a matriarch one day with her family, and she's going to teach them this whole new experience.
Yes.
She has and she's going to be able to pass that down, and they're going to pass that down for generations. And that was just such a beautiful vision that I think we can all keep. So Dee, thanks for putting that in my space, because every time I think of her now, I think of her as a great great grandma out there, leading this beautiful pod. So go ahead, Howard.
I just wanted to mention that I think we can have faith in Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's, because for one thing, orcas are very precocious at birth. It's after 18 months gestation, and they come out having heard their family from within the womb for probably a year. And they are already bonded to their family just by their vocals before that. And they're just very, very capable. And that was shown by both Luna and Springer in 2001, when they both showed up at about 2 years old in both cases. An incredible coincidence. But both of them were feeding themselves. They were moving around. They were lonely, obviously, but they were feeding themselves and capable of taking care of themselves. So, yeah, I think she'll be all right.
Yeah.
I love that. We'll put her picture back up there. I know this was the night before she left, but just breaching and after she ate, and I think she's kind of saying, I love what Dee said too, Cindy. I really, really do. I think she was like, okay, I just needed a little bit more seal to get my strength to get on out of here, and she did. And you're right, Marcia. She will let her family know that humans did care for her. And it could be history. And again, just thank you, Jude, Jared, Paul. I mean, everybody there from the tribe, just the First Nations people. You guys, thank you for praying around this and listening to her. And she got out in the right way. And just, I really do believe that was in collaboration of all of those people who were there on the ground with the best intentions for her. So thank you guys for every single one of you who was out there, and every single one of you who was praying and checking Facebook every 2 seconds to see if there was an update. We appreciate you guys a lot. Howard?
And if I could state the obvious again, the people up there, the Hatsit and Nuchalat, and all of the Salish peoples have been interacting and relating and building trust relationships with orcas for thousands of years. It's in their culture. It's in both the orcas' cultures, all the different cultures, and in all the different human cultures that were here 10,000 years ago to relate and build trust. So this is nothing new.
Yeah, just beautiful. It was, what a great outcome. I mean, it was really, I don't know, I think we're getting a little scared there for a while, but it's just the perfect outcome. And you're right. Somebody said, and I was trying to find it real quick, and I'm not going to be able to because I've seen so many posts, but it was a picture of Jude and Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's, and it said that the ancestors brought these cousins together, and they were together in a picture, and it was just really, really beautiful. So I think that's true. Guys, we'll end with watching the Whale Museum, but let's go around the room just real quick and see if anyone has anything to add. Alma?
Thank you, Howard, for that wonderful talk. Two of my favorite subjects, culture and interspecies interaction. Even though they just kind of pass each other like ships in the night, it's still really cool that we got to see live today. The transhumans and the residents.
I know.
Passing each other. Very good stuff. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Terry?
Yeah, thank you, Howard. That was so full of information. My brain is still soaking it up. But yeah, thank you everyone that's here on the show and everyone that's watching. You know, it's just I think we've been chosen by Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's and then just furthering what she taught us. And now little Sheheas is teaching us more things, right? And look she's only 2.
Yeah.
And look at how much we as two-leggeds are learning. So
Awesome. Christina?
Yeah, thank you, Howard, and thank you, Terry, for bringing such positive waves and telling us about her family, because I didn't know anything about them at all. So it really gives me a lot of inspiration. And everyone just keep those positive vibes going to her, because she's gonna be all right. But we got to keep the positive vibes going, and it's gonna be all right. So I love you all.
Love you too. Ma?
Yeah, what Christina said. Thanks, Howard. That was really great. It's so informative. And thanks, Terry, as well, for your information, because I know when you text me that info last week, I haven't stopped singing The Runaways for days. And it goes round and round and round in my head. But it's great to know that, you know, her family is so strong. So I know they'll be fine. So thanks. And thanks for all your information, Howard.
Thank you.
Awesome. Let's go, Stephanie.
Yeah, great, Howard. As usual, you are the best. And amazing that you could talk about this as we're all watching the whales. Right? I thought that was woo, because I would have been
Multimedia.
awesome. And Terry, thank you for your viewpoints on, what you've seen with her family, because I think that makes everybody feel better too. Right. So thank you all. Love you. Mwah.
Deb Cruz.
I want to be a marine biologist in my next life.
Do it this life. Just do it.
Yeah, plenty of time. Record that.
I think anyone watching this show, this could be a prerequisite. I'm just saying, because Howard, you have shared so much with us, just a wealth of knowledge, and from all of your years. I mean, I studied kind of on my own because it's, where I'm at and everything, but and a lot of it has been from you over the years. And so to be able to do that and share this information with folks, like Mary's now going to take this to her classroom. She's like, oh, can't wait to share this with my students. A lot of this might seem like 101 for some folks in this audience, but you're spreading education and awareness to a whole new group of people as well. And it's just invaluable and free, and it matters because the more people know, the more people care, right? And the more they do something about it. So Howard, you're making a massive difference, like ripples in the water. So thank you very much, Howard. We love you for always just giving us Professor Howard our
thank you
of education every week.
Well, I so appreciate your letting me rattle on, and that it's worthwhile for you. I really appreciate that. And Terry, thank you for telling us all about the T109s, and that I have a namesake in T109A4. Oh my God!
We all learned that today. That was cool.
Yeah. So what a great show.
Yeah.
From my point of view. Thanks, everybody.
Good stuff. Thank you, Howard. Seriously, just every time it's just you just know it and you're sharing it, and this is a great historical archives, these videos, because every single week we're learning something. So learning and sharing, that's what it's all about, guys. We'll end with watching a little bit of the live stream there at the Whale Museum, but please go there yourselves and subscribe to that YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube and type in the Whale Museum, and I'll go ahead and add that to the screen and say goodbye, and we'll see you guys next week. We all good? All right. Love you guys. Oh, I have everyone muted, so if you're saying something, I can't hear you. Here we go.